Hello YouTube. Today I'm going to go over all the different damage rolls in World of Warcraft and how they differ. In World of Warcraft, every single class has a damaging talent specialization that they can spec into. Pretty much every single class in World of Warcraft has an average of 3 different specializations except for 2. Warriors have 2 damage specs. One is Arms, the other one is Fury. Typically speaking, in World of Warcraft, if you're a melee damage dealer, you can only have a one-handed weapon in one hand and another one-handed weapon in another hand. If you want to use a two-handed weapon, you need 2 hands for that. You can't use a two-handed heavy axe or sword with one hand. Fury Warriors are the only damage dealer in the game that are strong enough to do this. They can have a two-handed weapon in each hand that hits really hard because they are that strong. Fury Warriors work with a large amount of burst damage and frontal cones that pretty much allow them to burst and cleave down anything in front of them, similar to a barbarian from Diablo 3 if you played that. Arms Warriors, however, are master swordsmen and axemen of the two-handed weapon. They specialize in bleeding one target dry with their weapon and then switching over to another target and loading that target up with bleeds so they can have up to 3 or 4 targets bleeding at once from different locations and then start bursting on one target while they're waiting to reapply their bleeds. Paladins have 1 damage spec, and that's Retribution. They pretty much used a combination, unlike warriors where they only have physical damage, which can be mitigated by armor. Paladins use a combination of physical and holy magic damage with every single one of their attacks using a two-handed weapon. Hunters have 3 different specs that are damage. Like many of the other pure DPS classes in the game I will go over soon, all have 3 damage specs. Hunters have marksmanship hunters, where our marksmanship spec, where they spec into their bow or their gun, and they can shoot way further and hit way further than any other ranged damage dealer in the game. Nobody can shoot further and hit harder with direct shots than a hunter. Hunters who are marksmanship can choose to still have their pet with them or sacrifice their pet for passive damage gain into their shots. Beast Mastery Hunters still can do damage with their bow and their gun, but 80% of their damage will come from their pet. They get a whole bunch of abilities and different commands to tell their pets to do various things in order to burst down the target. Survival Hunters are masters of traps. Although all 3 hunter specs have traps, Survival Hunters have the most traps with the shortest cooldowns, which they can place down on the ground for control and large amounts of AoE damage, and they use a melee sword or pole arm to do damage. Rogues are another 3 damage dealing spec. Rogues have Outlaw, Subtlety, and Assassination. Assassination, similar to Arms Warrior, works with rogues, where rogues are stealth-like characters that can slip in and out of the shadows. And when assassination rogue opens up on a target, they load it up with bleeds, but not just bleeds, poisons. Poisons that they cloak their daggers in, infesting that target with so many bleeds and poisons that when they switch to the next target, that target is the target that's behind them is still bleeding to death and left in a stun, because rogues are very good stunners. So that pretty much sums up assassination. Combat, or outlaw is what it's called now, are pirates, like swashbucklers. They have a concealed pistol that they can pull out for quick shots that do large amount of damage and also stun the enemy. And they can kind of swing around and summon a ghost ship, like a flying zeppelin, over enemies to bombard them with cannons. So if you like Pirates of the Caribbean, I definitely recommend that you play Outlaw Rogue. The third one is Subtlety. where unlike the other rogues where they have to clear combat to go in and out of stealth, subtlety rogues have a large amount of defensive power for them, so they take less damage than the other two rogue specs, and they are able to slip in and out of stealth a lot more easily than all the other rogue specs. Priests have one damage dealing spec, and that's Shadow. It's pretty much a corrupt dark magician. Think a Shadow priest, a priest gone, the Pope gone bad, and he starts using kind of dark shadow magic to load his enemies up with corrupt touches and even summon a shadow minion that will fight by his side. Shamans have two damaging specs. They have enhancement, which is a melee damaging spec. It's agility based. And they have elemental, which is a range damage spec. It's a casting intellect based spec, like priest is as well, shadow priest is as well. Enhancement pretty much imbues both their one-handed weapons, usually fist weapons, with the elements, being earth, storm, fire, etc., in order to do damage to their enemies when whacking them in the face. You can literally see molten lava and lightning. It looks like you're whacking people with snow, like dipping cones. If you ever went to a dipping cone ice cream place and you dip it in like chocolate and nuts and all that stuff, it literally looks like that when you're swinging your weapons on somebody, except with the power of the elements. Elemental shamans are similar, except they work from afar and they can cast lava surges, volcanoes, and they can even cast big, huge, giant earth and fire elemental bodyguards to protect them. Mages are another pure DPS spec, like rogues and hunters. They have three specs. They have arcane, frost, and fire, which is pretty much straightforward. Frost mages do damage with frost, fire mages do damage with fire, and arcane is very difficult to explain. It's depending on which storyline you follow. It's more of a dark or a pure magic. Warlocks are another pure damage dealing spec. They have contracts with the dead. They are ranged, and they are intellect based. They have three different talents, and the ones that they have is demonology, affliction, and destruction. Destruction allows them to conjure and even summon big, huge, giant fireballs from hell, or shadow bolts from demonic energy bouncing around in hell, and then project it at whatever target they're trying to kill for large amounts of damage. That's destruction. Demonology has the ability to summon big, huge, giant demons and to pretty much fight for them. So they're kind of like the Beast Mastery Hunters, where warlocks can summon lots and lots and lots of demons to do their bidding. Affliction, similar to the Arms Warrior, can load up multiple targets at once, one at a time pretty much, like pit 3 to 4 debuffs of curses and corruption on one person or one target, and then do that to another and another, up to 3 to 4 targets ticking from 3 to 4 different curses and corruption. Pretty much the warlock takes his finger, points it at them, and says, I curse you, curse you, curse you, curse you, and curse you. Monks, if you like Kung Fu Panda, have wind walking. Windwalker monks are capable of flying crane kicking, spinning crane kicks, all different kinds of backflips and jabs and fist of furies where they lock you down in place and stun you and do a rapid fist attack, and all different kinds of spinning backwards Chuck Norris kicks you can imagine. If you like martial arts or even Kung Fu Panda, Windwalker is definitely the one to play for you. Druids have two damaging specs, one being a melee agility base, which is cat, feral, where they turn into a cat, which increases their movement speed, and they do a mixture of bleeding a target and bursting it. It's completely balanced, unlike where Arms leans more on bleeds and Affliction leans more on periodic cursing, and Destruction leans more on burst and Fury leans more on burst. Cats are perfectly balanced between bleeding and bursting a target down with bites and shredding them to death in the back. Same thing goes with their other damage spec, which is balance. It looks kind of like a chicken slash owl slash stag. They have antlers like an elk on top of their head, but they have the body of a big, huge, giant chicken slash owl. And pretty much Moonkins are balanced druids, have the ability to use the power of the sun and the moon and insects around them to inflict large amounts of solar and lunar damage, and even call down massive stars to impact their enemies, causing great amount of damage, as well as burning their targets with the power of the sun, causing them to take as well periodic and burst damage balanced like their feral counterparts that you can also choose. And the last two are demon hunters, which are like vampire bats that can fly and dash all over the place and cut through you. If you know who Illidan is, that's pretty much the demon hunter damaging spec. And death knights, they have frost, which is a two-handed sword, and it pretty much does a whole bunch of damage, like burst damage, that comes from their weapon being so cold that it hurts that much more when it cuts through you. So similar to Arthas, if you know who that is. And Unholy, where pretty much the Death Knight is so undead and so disgusting that he's rotting with so many diseases and has flies and stuff hovering all around him, and he can even summon a ghoul that's just as disgusting as him, that anything near him rots to death. So it's very similar to an Arms Warrior, where he can load up multiple diseases into multiple people surrounding him. And that's pretty much all the damage dealing specs in World of Warcraft. I'll go over the healing ones after this.